Hi, and welcome to another edition of NCBA's Coffee Break. I'm Nathan Willner, Vice President, Government Affairs, dealing with the national issues. I'm excited to have a conversation today with Aby Punnoose, Director at Provana. And today we're going to be talking about production management best practices. So with that, um, Abby, welcome to Coffee Break. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Nathan. Good morning. My name is Aby, and I'm working as a director in our business process management vertical, overseeing collection law firms, agencies, and foreclosure firms. I've been with Provana for over 10 years, and I've led a 300-member operations team for about 3 years. Currently, I'm responsible for working closely with the firms, offering consultative and performance-driven insights.
So, with the unpredictability and consistency in files from clients, what are the best practices for managing fluctuating volumes? So, maybe kind of walk us through. That was a kind of a complicated question. So,
Sure, sure,
yeah.
sure. That's a great question and a great way to start off the conversation, Nathan. Uh, you're right. This is one of the most common struggles firms face today, since the volume is so unpredictable. I would really like to break this down into three categories. The first one would be assessing capacity and production planning. We all know that legal workflow is structured, all processes are interrelated, and production is expected at a batch level. What I mean by that is, as soon as you receive a batch of accounts, within 5 days, we know that we have to send a validation letter. 30 days from the validation letter, we know that we have to draft a complaint. 90 days from a complaint, most firms know that they have to file a judgment. What this means is that your production planning and staffing level is dependent on your month-to-month placement, your suit rates, your service rates, your judgment rates, and your garnishment rates. At Provana, with our outsourcing team, we work closely with the firms on production planning, using these milestones to project staffing levels. Each month, we look at these trends to plan staffing changes. The second category that I would like to talk about would be the use of technology solutions. So many firms who work with us today use Provana data analytics platform. Using the platform, we review batch level performance, as I said earlier. We look at the firm's open inventory, and we are able to project more accurate volume trends, translating into more accurate capacity planning requirements. We also look at places where we can use our Provana automated solution in combination with human solutions to provide flexible staffing. Last category that I would like to dive into would be operations management. So at Provana, we look at the current skill set of our team members, and we constantly work on cross-training the team members, which allows us to create buffer within our existing resource pool. So as volumes increase, we are able to manage fluctuating volume just because of cross-trained resources. We also use a Provana proprietary production management tool, which helps us determine if the team and resource capacity is optimized. We also periodically assess department level requirements, making sure we have enough staffing across all areas.
So the question then becomes, how do you optimize teams for consistent delivery? Right. So that's the trick, right?
Absolutely. Great question. So I would like to start with cross-training resources. So I briefly talked about it in the previous question. And I feel at a team level, cross-training becomes really, really important to manage fluctuating volumes. The more people you have cross-trained, it will give you more flexibility to manage fluctuating volumes. And I'll try to explain this using an example. So let's say if you have two resources in your placement review team, and each team member does about 200 transactions a day. Now, instead of a 500 file batch, let's say the servicer places a batch of 2000. The two people in your team will now be able to complete that batch in 5 days, which really hampers your performance. Instead, if you have 5 to 6 people cross-trained on that same process, you would be able to complete that batch and increased volume in 2 days and save 3 days, which will help you drive performance. Second, I think resource optimization is extremely important. And what I mean by resource optimization is assessing process level AHT, which is essentially average handling time. What I mean by that is you review how many transactions can be completed by a resource within a certain duration of time. So look at the process over an hour or a couple of hours and come up with what's the time that is required in order to complete a transaction on an average. For example, if you're filing a complaint and a complaint takes about 6 minutes per transaction, for an average team member who's spending 8 hours in the office, the person should be able to file 80 complaints at that 6 minute average handling time. However, if the team member is expected to file like a return of service, which is just one document, one pleading, it should be fairly quicker, right? So with a 3 minute average handling time, they should be able to do to double the number of complaints, so about 160 filings a day. So what this helps you in would be driving employee performance based on targets derived out of the average handling time. And if you're able to increase productivity by just 10% across the firm, you're really looking at, if you look at a 100 people firm, you're creating 10 employee buffer out of your existing staff without needing of hiring additional resources. Last, I would say standard SOPs is an important aspect of making your process standard. So it becomes easier for you to train, onboard resources, and maintain consistent delivery.
So it looks like that not only do you increase your capacity, but you also save money. So
Yeah.
the question then becomes, what are the best practices for ensuring quality controls are in place? Because again, you don't want to give up quality for speed or efficiency, right? You need to balance the two.
True, very true. So I would say I look at it as a three-step process. Step one being you look at the process and define what your QC parameters are or your QC checkpoints are. So looking at the process, there'll be some steps which are critical, some steps which are not so critical, like somebody missed to update the notes. It's not a critical step. However, they have not coded the file with the right amount or the dollar value has a bigger impact. So identifying all these checkpoints and categorizing them as whether it's critical to the business or whether it's like a regular issue is important and should be part of step one. After you build the QC matrix or checklist, the second step is identifying what is the sample size that is required to be audited. And that should be based on the complexity of the process. So if it's a process which is highly complex and it has a lot of decision-making steps that are involved, then your audit sample should be higher. If it's a straightforward process where you just data entry or you're just renaming a document, then your audit sample size can be lower. Step two, after you've done the first step, would be identifying the right QA resource. I feel that a QA resource should have good knowledge of the process and should have had fair experience working on the process. We at Provana, whenever we assign QA resources, we have them go through rigorous QA training, have them certify on QA policies, procedures, make sure they understand the implications, and we periodically assess them and make sure they go through these training and certification semi-annually. Last and most important aspect of QA is coaching and feedback. So I can't say more about this because without this, the first two steps have no value. So I'd start with tracking audit results. So whenever the QAs are auditing files or transactions, they'll be marking issues or they'll be marking QA observations and findings. we at Provana have integrated our QA findings with our data analytics. It gives us insights on QA observation. And really, we are able to see whether it's an employee level issue or it's a process or an SOP level gap. For all issues that a QA identifies, what we also do is a root cause analysis. Which helps us identify the root cause of the issue. And then based on the root cause that we've identified, we are able to implement a corrective and preventive action. We also ensure that we provide daily QA feedback sessions with the team, and observations are being shared with the team so they improve. I would say QA calibrations is also an important aspect because with the ever-changing rules, guidelines in the industry, QA have to be up to date with the changing rules and guidelines to be able to provide the right results.
How do you use the technology in the workflow management to determine whether it's a process or a person? And I think that's many times when there's a
Yeah.
problem, finding the problem is difficult. But again, the way you just described it, that you can utilize technology to find and pinpoint specifically if it's a whole process correction or just you have one employee that's just not getting it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And data analytics plays an important part. So as we've integrated our data analytics with the QA results, we're able to pinpoint that very easily because if it's a repetitive issue with an employee, we are able to track that using data analytics.
I thought we were getting close to the end of our cup of coffee, so to speak. So I just wanted to know if you wanted to kind of wrap it up in some final thoughts on the topic.
Sure, sure. I'd say one thing that I did not touch base on was the use of technology. I know you asked that question as well. So I would like to touch on that before I wrap up, primarily because, I mean, you touched on the workflow segment. So first and foremost, I'd say most case management systems have the ability to define workflows and make processes efficient. So if the firms do not have the required skill set, we at Provana have specialized team that can help set up and streamline workflows. And beyond that, we have our Provana automated solutions, human tech-enabled solutions, which can definitely help the firms scale.
Definitely, that is the use, of technology to save time and money. So now I can get your final thoughts on uh, production management best practices.
Yeah, so I'd say production management best practices are really four segments that I talked about overall. Step one is, again, making sure you're assessing capacity and constantly evaluating production needs, and then ensuring that you're periodically reviewing it, ensuring you're meeting with all the departments, and making sure that you have enough people to support.
And it sounds like Provana is on the cutting edge of that information and has unique and intuitive initiatives for members. So again, anyone has questions, I strongly suggest they reach out to Provana to get some answers. And with that, I think we've come to the end of our cup of coffee, and going to let our listeners go. And hopefully, you'll come back for another episode to talk a little bit more about how things are progressing at Provana when dealing with production management. So, with that, thank you for joining us, and I'll give our listeners back some time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
Thank
Nathan.
you.
Have a good day. Bye.